Hello and welcome to Attacking Third. We are live on YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We have a midweek Challenge Cup preview to talk about. We have to round up week 10 action because we had one more straggling game on Monday. We have to chat some news and notes across the globe of women's soccer. And of course, we're going to take another peek at our U.S. women's national team stock watch. So make sure you subscribe to us, like this video, drop us your thoughts on all the things we're going to talk about. You know, we want to hear from you as always. So let's go. Hey, everyone, and welcome into Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today by my special guest, Jordan Angeli, NWSL analyst. We're chatting all things news and notes, U.S. Women's National Team Stock Watch. We have to round out Week 10 action because it was lingering, and I want to hear all your thoughts about it, Jordan, because I loved hearing you on the call. And of course, Challenge Cup is back this week. We're going to preview that as well. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Sandra?
I'm great. Anytime I get to hop on here and link up with you or link up with whoever to talk about all things with soccer, it's a good day.
Yeah.
Good way to start the day.
And you have your Jordan hat on, and ode to me, of course, right?
That's exactly what I planned.
Yeah.
100%. I said, you know what? This is going to be the third episode I think that we're doing together this month. So I was like, let's show Jordan some extra love today. Of course. Happy to be here with you. Happy to be here with you. Happy to be here with everyone joining us. We see that the chat is popping off. So thank you all for being with us this morning. Remember, if you want to join us, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube at youtube.com/attacking3rd. That way you get alerts for whenever we go live, and you can check out and hang out with our cool community every time we do one of these live and participate in the conversation as always. Let's get to it. Of course, we're going to start off with NWSL action, but first we have to officially close out week 10. We had 4 games on Saturday, we had a game on Sunday, and we had one more game on Monday to officially wrap up week 10. But because it was such a late kickoff, the NWSL After Dark for Angel City and Chicago Red Stars, you and I did not get a chance to recap that. We got to preview it. You got to be on the call. That was awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. I got to put us on blast to start the episode, Jordan. We both went Angel City, and of course, Chicago Red Stars go on the road and spoil the evening for Los Angeles. A 2-1 victory for Chicago. All 3 points for them on the road. What a match.
Yeah. It had to be the Lucky Pine Cone, right?
Yeah.
We're not following this. We were very confused. I had seen the Pine Cone, didn't know what the Pine Cone was about. Then it was in the post game. So go to Chicago Red Stars. I think they're the Chicago Pine Cones now. But it was an interesting game. Both these teams were really desperate for a victory, and I think you saw that in varying ways. I think for Angel City, they started off the game very well. And I told Mike Watts, who was calling the game afterwards, how amazing was it that we got to be there in person? It was just like the energy of that stadium on a Monday night is better than anything I could have imagined. So I can't imagine what it's like there on Saturday, just pumped and packed. So they're doing good things there in LA. But I told Mike after the game, after the first 15 minutes, I could have told you that this game was 4-0 Angel City, and you would have believed it, because they were just winning every ball in the midfield. I thought the midfielders were dominating that space, doing a really good job of finding the channels and getting crosses in. But then that's where it broke down. It wasn't the right pass in the final third or the attacking third. There wasn't the correct runner at the end of a crossed ball. And credit to Chicago. Chris Petroselli came in with a game plan. It was one of the times this season, Sandra, which you will know, that this was the same starting 11 that we saw back-to-back games in the same formation. They've been changing it up a lot. So to see them go with a 4-2-3-1, I think helps a lot of players. I think specifically it helped Julia Bianchi, who looked settled in this match, could win balls. I think she had the most interceptions and most possessions won for Chicago, which is a big spot to be in when you're a 6. It also tells me that Angel City had a lot of the ball, so she was able to get those interceptions, correct? So I thought that Angel City, it's confusing to me how they want to play, I think, in moments, because they have some good players, but they can't get them to be effective. I don't think Julie Ertz has been that effective, but who's around her helping, or how do they build up? Is it not stretched enough so she can get on the ball? I thought it was too condensed when they build up at times. And McCaskill and Nabet weren't able to give Ertz the space that she needs in the buildup to create attacks. So yeah, confusing performance for me from Angel City, because there were moments where I'm like, man, you guys can score goals and you're showing that you can put your foot down on the pedal and get after it. But then once things kind of shifted, they couldn't find themselves back in the game.
Yeah, look, you and I think, throwing it back to the preview, we both go Angel City, and I think you're touching on some of the reasons why within kind of your recollection of this match that when you were on the call. But we thought that it was going to come down to the bench. We thought maybe Angel City had the edge in terms of their roster and players who would be available to go in this match. Chicago is the team that's starting to get players back into the fold. I mean, I would include Ava Cook is a part of those players as well. She's not someone that we saw in that early quarter of the season for the Red Stars, and we're just now starting to see her get reps. It was cool to chat with her a little bit post game. Asked her about the pine cone. She confirmed that it was a lucky pine cone. Now it was found by Jenna Bike, but to see her kind of evolvement over the course of this first half of the season, the Red Stars are amongst many teams who are hitting that midway point of a really, really long regular season. And it just sort of feels like the right time for them to finally start clicking and kind of getting some things together. And maybe a part of that, does fall in line with players who were available. I'm with you 100% on Bianchi. Thought this was the game that she finally looked comfortable in. In this league, the pre-match availability for Bianchi and the Red Stars, she talked about that a little bit, how it takes a little bit of time to maybe get adjusted to a different style of play, a different league, physicality, that such a transitional league. We hear about that so much. But even within all of those things, Chicago has just been this team that has not even been streaky. They just haven't shown enough, I think, for you or I, for us to have made the pick in their favor. And so going with Angel City and not seeing those things connect, do we have to maybe bring up I'm talking a lot about like the timing of seasons.
Yeah.
Do we have to bring up the uncomfortable question and situation where maybe things aren't connecting tactically, coaching staff to roster? We saw the formations that they were kind of like equal. It was like kind of like a little bit of 4-2-3-1 kind of energy, I think, at times for both of these teams. And the adjustments that just weren't there for me. And this isn't just this particular game for Angel City. It's something that we've seen over the course of their first half. And I think that's an argument. The argument for players who are available or unavailable, I think, is a case that any team can really make this season. I think when we're looking at that bottom half of the table, we've got two teams where they are echoing that similar storyline. But at this point, I think you've got a lot of talent across that Angel City roster. So we're wondering, why is it not working? So as we're going into this halfway point, do you think that the seat is a little bit hot for Freya Coombe at this point?
I don't think so, because of how Angel City has operated with her, and it seems like they have given her a lot of trust. I think it has been difficult, and I asked her, in some of the ways that they play, they really utilize their outside backs, but they have been in a rotation of outside backs. But you have to remember, Merritt Mathias hasn't played 1 minute for this team. She's been injured the whole season. So can they get her back to health? But so if you're a team that wants to play the way that Freya Coombe wants to play, your outside backs need to be good, and your central midfielders need to be pretty good on the ball. And that's where my issue was in this game is, I think Savannah McCaskill has been really good for Angel City, but I think the way that she wants to play, Savannah McCaskill could be a really good winger for her, and they could get a better 10. And with Julie Ertz and Amandine Henry, who's going to be here later in the year, then you're setting yourself up with a core of a central midfield that can be really powerful, using McCaskill playing as a pocket winger and overlapping outside back. Like, those are the types of tactical moves that I think Freya Kuhn wants to execute. She has just been one of the coaches in this league who has had to deal with a lot of injuries, and how do you get the most out of your players? That's what's confusing to me is, especially in a game last night where you'd expect the intensity to be there with Katie Johnson or not last night, whenever that was, Katie Johnson and Julie Ertz, two players who really give you such a mentality that you would think this team at home, only winning one game at home, would have more grit to them, more bite, more fight. And once they gave up that goal on the corner kick, it felt like Chicago grasped the momentum and they couldn't get it back until late in the second half.
Yeah, well, I think maybe this is just like stating the obvious, but you're down 2-0 at halftime. So obviously you come out in the second half with a little bit more urgency, right? A little bit more oomph. And we're looking maybe for those adjustments. We're looking for those tactical shifts. I mean, we saw Camberos this is a player that they also picked up to try to make sure that they had a little bit of a deeper bench. Looks like a talented, quick when she gets on the ball, but just I feel like this is another player where they haven't been able to figure out exactly how and when and where to utilize her. And she struggled a bit having to go up against Casey Kruger.
Because I was going to say, well, this is not the game you want to put her in as a start, her first start here in NWSL, I believe, in regular season. Yeah. And you put her against Casey Kruger. So, and she's a player that wants to be isolated, but Angel City didn't use their midfield properly in order to isolate her on the far side and get her the ball in situations where she could be effective. So that's where I'm just putting a little bit more blame on the decision making of, okay, maybe we can bring her to the others. I don't know. It felt like it was a tad bit off, but I agree with you.
I think it was funny too, because we see Alyssa Thompson come into this game and they almost are like, you know, who's going to get past Casey Kruger is going to be Alyssa Thompson, but she also struggled. And this goal, we have to talk about this goal because Angel City did pull one back, and it was an incredible moment, really emotional. Awesome scenes here. We see Sydney Leroux get involved in the game to try to spark something out of nothing, right? And that's exactly what happens. And it also happens because Alyssa Thompson is able to go ahead and spearhead this. She's the catalyst to it all. She's, you know, they recognize that they have to make the adjustment. Alyssa Thompson and the staff is like, you know what? You're not going to get past Kruger. Why don't you switch really quickly? Sure. And then all of a sudden, we see this goal break through. Thompson just on the ball, direct, getting wide and then cutting end line and serving this up. And we see Sydney Leroux just knock this away. And it was an incredible moment. You just saw what it meant to her teammates. You can hear what it meant to the crowd as well. So it was incredible to witness. Shout out to our producer, Billy, putting up the footage here. Again, join us live and you could see all this good stuff that we're talking about. But just not enough. Maybe too little, too late for Angel City at this point.
I think so.
The goal comes with just 2 minutes left in regulation.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the decision to not start Thompson. We don't know why that is, because I do think that what Alyssa Thompson gives you on the ball is maybe your one way to break down Casey Kruger if she is on that side, which Alyssa Thompson tends to float to. Well, she goes to either side, but we've seen her effective on the left side, which is Casey Kruger was on the right for Chicago. So don't know the decision behind that, but I do think one of the things you want if you're Freya Kuhn is Alyssa Thompson and Sydney Leroux playing together. So maybe that was a thought. Okay, if Sydney's going in late in the game, we want to make sure Alyssa is available late in the game. So we'll bring her off the bench. We'll make sure those two have a good connection. And it was such like a Sydney Leroux goal. Yeah. It was, I am going to outwork you and get her body. Like, she contorts her body and figures out a way to get fouls, get away from people. I think I mentioned, like, she takes the half chance that nobody takes. Yeah. I said this in the game. She will count on herself and say, oh, the goalkeeper's not expecting a shot right now. I'm going to take a shot because then they're not going to know what to get from me. I'm going to be a little bit of a wild card. And I love that about her. And I think everybody loves that about her. You could hear the crowd go wild. So yeah, it was emotional. And how cool when we get players to really like say how they feel. Yeah. I think that I have seen just over social. So many people share what Sydney was saying, because life is challenging for everybody in various ways. And for her to come on the broadcast and show who she is, like her true human spirit, was really touching. And I have seen people that don't even play soccer share that. And it was a really cool moment to be a part of, but to witness in the stadium, gosh, Mike Watts and I were like,
yeah,
this is so cool.
What a time. Yeah, I love that. I love that for you guys. You guys did great. You could hear it on the call, kind of living up to the hype of that moment. And you know what? Maybe those are the silver linings, right? Maybe those are the things that you go through over the course of this week and take a look at and say, this is the momentum. This is the energy that we want to take coming out of this loss and going into our next match, because it's tough hanging out at that bottom of the table for sure. It weighs on you, I think, at this point.
Before we go on, because I don't know if we're moving on yet, Sandra, but we have to talk about Ava Cook and the goals that she scored. Chicago didn't, managed some high pressure, a lot of chances from Angel City early on, not a lot that challenged Alyssa Nair. I think that was the thing that was kind of confusing. I think 2 or 3 shots on target, that one, the goal being one of them throughout the entire game. But Ava Cook, it was like when they got the corner kick, they knew this is our chance to change the game. It was like this weird energy you could feel. They score off the corner kick. And then Ava Cook, throughout the entire time she was on the field, embodied the emotion and the intensity that she said her team needed. Like at halftime, she said, we had talked about how we have to be a different level. And she fought for every ball. She, that second goal she scored, who scores that goal? Like, it's not a great, it's
throwing her body around. It was intense.
Yeah. It's great vision from Yuki Nagasato to have the wherewithal to head that ball into her space. Like, Yuki is just amazing.
Out of this world. Yeah.
Out of this world. But it wasn't an easy goal for Cook, and she managed to make it look like, oh, I'll just put this in the back of the net with a slide tackle shot.
And that's so not an easy way to even contort your body and to try to get it on frame, but she made it look easy.
Yeah, she was great. So I think Chicago brought the right energy, and they came in so focused, knowing, hey, we just had a win in regular season. We can make this back to backs and really go into summer feeling like, all right, whatever it is, we're not getting outworked. We're not getting pushed around. We are going to set the tone when it comes to physicality. And sometimes you have to do that. If things aren't going right and you don't have the players, they've dealt with a lot of injuries and things that haven't gone in their favor. So you can see what it means to that team. They were so pumped for Cook and just that moment, 15, 16 minutes into the game.
No, I love it for this player. I mean, this was Ava Cook was drafted in 2022 and was one of the many rookies in last season for Chicago Red Stars who were relied upon, asked to take a bigger role, step up over the course of the season. And she showed a lot of promise. I think she showed that this is maybe a player that is going to be kind of part of this next era of Chicago Red Stars history. So to not have her available or playing significant minutes early in this first half of the season, I think, maybe hurts the Red Stars. I think you see in these last 2 regular season wins, specifically her impact on the pitch, and what that means. And you love to see it. You love to see a Midwest kid with a Midwest team thriving and succeeding, right? Drafted out of Michigan State and a Michigan native. Yeah. It was funny when I had reported out and tweeted out about the lucky pine cone, and someone had asked if during the halftime interview with you, if Ava Cook said gritty or greedy, and I just had to laugh because I'm like, I'm pretty sure she said gritty, but she's just, sometimes the Midwesterner jumps out and you can't really tell. But love these past 2 performances from Ava Cook, and love that she got her first ever brace as a pro with the Red Stars. We'll see what Angel City comes out of with, if they kind of are motivated by their finish, and we'll see if the Red Stars continue to build on this into the summer. Like you say, it's an exciting time, I think, for teams in the bottom half of the table to kind of take a look at and say, now that we're going into the second half of this season, we can't leave anything behind, because if you really want to make a push for that upper table, it really, really, really starts now. So we'll see. Challenge Cup, we have 1 game on the say we do have to make a preview and a pick. Gotham is going to face off against Orlando for the Seoul Challenge Cup game. There's a warning out there. There's already been, the weather's already starting to play a role. There's unfortunately some fires that are affecting the air quality out there, and the league has already issued a statement, and the Gotham FC have released a statement saying that they are monitoring the situation, and they want to, of course, have the safety and concerns of the players at present and in front of their mind. So they're keeping an eye on it. But as of right now, this is scheduled to kick off at 7:30 ET. You can catch the action on CBS Sports Network. Maybe we should run down the standings a little bit for Challenge Cup, because at this point, everyone's got at least 2 games within their respective groups. I believe I believe OL Reign might be the only team that has 3 at this point, but Gotham is on top of the East region group in the Challenge Cup, but it's kind of narrow. I feel like the East region group here is kind of up for grabs. I think Gotham is sitting in a good position right now, but anything can happen. I think with an Orlando Pride team that has unfortunately hit a little bit of a snag after going on an unbeaten run, maybe Challenge Cup is the thing that kind of kickstarts them back into gear. What do you think? Do you have a pick in this game? Do you feel heavy on a winner, heavy on a loser? You feeling the makings of a draw? What do you think, Jordan?
Well, Orlando's on a 9-game winless run in Challenge Cup. So read that this morning. So it hasn't been a good run of play for them, not just this year in the Challenge Cup, but going back to last season as well. But I think when I look at the Challenge Cup at this point of the season, both these teams with a difficult result over the weekend, I feel like there might be less changes than we've seen before, because they both want to potentially get themselves back on winning ways. So I would imagine we're going to see enough of Lynn Williams, maybe 45 minutes at the end of the game, that's plenty of time for Lynn Williams to make an impact. I would say it's hard to pick against Gotham when they're at home after having a difficult loss at home in front of the crowd. With the personalities on that team, Sandra, they're not going to be happy with that. I can just hear Ali Krieger right now with her pregame chat. I can hear Ali Long and McCall Zerboni being like, this is not how we're going to go down. We're not losing at home. So I feel like that mindset, mentality, and one of the things I've really appreciated about Gotham is just both of these teams actually really want to play. I would say Seb Hines wants to play too. He wants the ball on the ground, and they've had to go through some growing pains in that over the season, the Pride have. But for Gotham, they've had so much rotation through the whole season already that it feels like everybody understands what Juan Carlos Amoros wants out of them. And now as they progress, everybody's played significant minutes. I think Naho was the only player that hadn't played real significant minutes until she got a substitution a couple of games ago. So she got on the field, but every other player on the team had played, participated, really made an impact. And now you're starting to see Gotham build layer upon layer. When they attack, it's so unpredictable. You can recognize a pattern, and they see that you're doing that, so they switch and go to the other point against the grain. I think it's hard to go against Gotham here, but this might be a really fun Challenge Cup game because of that. Both teams coming off a loss and feeling like they need to right the ship a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, oh man, it's so tough for me to take a look at these two teams and the results that they're coming off of into this Challenge Cup and say that and make a confident pick.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna front. Look, I'm not making this pick with any confidence. I'm leaning towards Gotham in this one. I am, but Challenge Cup has been exactly what the hashtag has said it's been. It's cue the chaos. It's been, I think, a little bit unpredictable, and I think when we finally get to those knockout rounds, it'll be even more unpredictable. I mean, even just like I said, narrowing the lens on this East region group, I think the teams are separated by a point. I think when it comes to trying to be the top of the group and then possibly be that highest seeded second place team. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out, if both teams come out of this East region group. I mean, look, that's a wild stat to even hear you reference about Orlando Pride in the Challenge Cup. I mean, are they aware of that? Are they going to be motivated by that? You know, is that another thing to sort of, you know, keep in your backpack as you go on the road and get ready to face off against this team? And look, I appreciate all the engagement in the chat. There's a lot of folks who think that this game might not get played, but look, I'm just going to throw it back to a few seasons ago. I had to go and cover a game when there was wildfires taking place in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know if you remember this, Jordan.
Remember that? Yeah.
There was a wild weekend there. I think it was in 2018 or 2019, where unfortunately on the opposite side of the coast, there was a lot of wildfires taking place, and the smog and this drifting smoke was absolutely affecting the air quality. And there was a specific game, I believe, at Memorial Stadium between the Red Stars and the Reign, and it went on. It went on as followed. So, I mean, there were a lot of things that went into making that decision to go and, you know, make sure that the game was played. I believe they tried to have some resources available to players on the side. I believe oxygen was one of those things, just to make sure, you know, that there weren't any troubles. I believe there were stoppages of play within that. I think they tried to treat it like a excessive heat game. So like there was going to be a certain stoppage of play. So I'm curious if those types of conversations are happening right now, as you and I are trying to hypothetically make a pick for a game that we're not sure is going to be played or not.
Right. And that's, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not making the decision to play or not play. We're just telling you what we think.
Yeah. So I think it's probably going to get played. And I think maybe I'm going to go with Gotham in this one as well. I think that's a team that's not going to find themselves down for too long. For sure. I think you hit it right on the head that there are players who are saying that this is the game where they're going to turn things around. I think since they're sitting on top of the standings in the East region, that they're going to want to go ahead and just kind of make that a wrap. You have to imagine that if you get a win in this game against the Pride, that you're sitting pretty to probably advance into those knockout rounds for the Challenge Cup. So I'm going to go Gotham this one as well. We'll see if we're correct.
I'll just say, I hope for Orlando Pride we see Summer Yates. I've really liked her when she's come into games, but she's played a lot in the Challenge Cup, and her connection with Ali Watt up top. Those two understand each other. Yates has the capacity as an attacking midfielder to play the final pass. Really good, crafty player, but her final pass is what sets her apart. It did when she played collegiately at Washington, UW, and it will here in NWSL. And these are the types of games and the types of minutes where if she can be effective in this kind of game, I think people will start to really look at her, and she might start to push to get more minutes in the regular season. But just watch out for her if they do end up playing and she gets the start, because she's a fun player to watch.
I love that. Summer Yates watch. Keep an eye on it. And we'll, of course, recap it and see if we're correct in our picks. Stick with us, though. We've got some more things to talk about. We want to touch on some international news. And we're also going to close out the episode with United States Women's National Team Stock Watch. So stay with us after a quick break.
They say patience is a virtue. But for some things, we can't wait.
All right, we're back. Let's shift things to the international level here. We're going to talk about some news that you might have missed along the way in between whenever we're talking about NWSL regular season or Challenge Cup. We want to send a congratulations to Mexico's U20 team. They officially picked up their second U20 CONCACAF title. It's exciting time, I think, for the Mexican national team program. Jordan, you and I were briefly chatting a little bit off mic, and with the World Cup coming up this summer and 6 CONCACAF teams going to be represented in this World Cup, we think about Mexico and their place in the global side of women's soccer. They unfortunately are not going to participate in this 2023 World Cup. They were the hosts in the CONCACAF qualifiers. They fell short of their own expectations, quite frankly. And to sort of see the response, I think, from the federation and from the program specifically to try to ensure that there's still investment and there's still effort and resources funneled into these programs, I think is really, really important. And I think to kind of see something like this come out, kind of a title for the next gen, essentially, leaves a lot of hope and leaves a lot of promise, I think, for that next window for this team.
Yeah, in MLS, everybody always says the kids are all right, and I feel like this could be related to this in Mexico, that the kids are all right, they're doing well. And I think the biggest thing that Mexico lacked in qualifying for the full team last year was that competitive drive, which was crazy. You are the hosts. You should have passion to represent your country at home on a world stage to get yourself to the World Cup. And it felt like it missed the passion that we see all the time with these Mexican sides. And so not just to compete, but to win for these youngsters in the U20 CONCACAF. I've played in those. It is intense. It is so fun. And it's difficult to win because, the top 3-4 teams there are going to give you a real run for your money. And yeah, I like this because it only makes the game in our region better if Mexico is competing with the United States cycle after cycle. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of those names that were on this U20 team and the next World Cup cycle that maybe in the U.S.
Geez, from your lips to these soccer gods' ears, please, Jordan. I love it. Giving me chills just thinking about it. But no, we definitely wanted to send some congratulations for sure. I'm rocking my Mexico shirt, so I was like, you know what? I was like, let's talk about this a little bit on the show today. Let's pivot to 2023 World Cup, though. We're hitting that sweet spot, Jordan. We're starting to see national team programs drop their official rosters for this summer's tournament, and it just makes it feel like we already have been like on the hype train, right? We're like locked in, like mentally we're there, like we're all there in the World Cup already. But things like this just make it feel like so much closer when you kind of see the players, when you see these rosters get dropped. A lot coming out of Europe at this moment. Haven't seen too many outside of some European clubs so far. We've seen rosters from England, from France, Portugal, Germany, the Netherlands. Germany going with 28 players to say, hey, this is our preliminary roster. Actually, we are gonna still whittle this down to 2020 to 23, and talk about putting the pressure on.
Oh my God.
I think if you're one of those 28 players, you're just kind of like, okay, I've still got a shot here. What does that look like, or what does that mean for me? But I'm stuck on Germany because I know you and I we just had to recap that Women's Champions League final where Wolfsburg had fallen just short in a 3-2 loss against Barcelona. But you could see in this 28 player roster for Germany that there's a number of Wolfsburg players listed amongst it, but it's wild to think that some of them actually might not make that final 23 player. We're talking about maybe 5 players based on the math who might not go to the World Cup. But I was curious to see, even like with just the goalkeeper position, that they've got 4 listed, so that there's even competition. 3 goalkeepers, so I would imagine that Meryl Froms from Wolfsburg and Anna Katrin Berger are likely your front runners there, and maybe that 3rd spot is up for grabs. So there's
Sounds familiar, huh?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I think there's a lot there to look for Germany. Curious about who's going to be on that final list. But I mean, these are the Euro, the runners up of the Euros, and I would consider this a team that would probably be amongst what pundits are probably going to say is a contender for the World Cup. I think any of the top 10 teams who are ranked can get the better of the other on any given Sunday. But I think we're also very curious about when the Netherlands dropped their roster, because if folks aren't aware at this point, when the United States went through their World Cup draw, they got drawn into Group E. So now we have seen 2 rosters from their group competitors. So they're going to go up against Vietnam, Netherlands, and Portugal. And both Netherlands and Portugal have dropped their official 23-player rosters. Well, Netherlands are also another team that's going to still go ahead and narrow things down. But we're going from Germany with 28 players. Netherlands has 30 on their preliminary roster. So when you, I don't know, Jordan, do you think when you have that big of a number still this close to a World Cup that there's just still some unknown variables for the Netherlands? Does it feel more like, is it less about that there's so much competition or more about there's question marks here?
I think that maybe a little bit of both, that there is a lot of competition, but some of that competition might lead to question marks as to like who fits better in with what the predicted starting lineup is going to be, or that second wave of players that come on to a game. So I'm not shocked. I think this is just a kind of a strange World Cup, because normally right now, Sandra, we would be playing the first World Cup game. This tournament would have started. Teams would have already been preparing for this. And so pushing it back over a month and a half, really, the start time, I think poses some problems with these European squads, especially because they've now been out of how do they keep everybody fit and healthy for another month and a half? They probably had a few less dates. I know the women's national team, it seems like they've had less dates to get together and to play in this calendar year due to those international windows. And maybe that's just what I think. I haven't looked into that data, but I just feel like the idea behind that is, can we get a group together who's going to be really competitive, and that competition is going to drive us to be our best when we do narrow it down from 30 to 23, with a couple of those being, I'm sure, alternates or players that they're saying, hey, you might be ready to push into the starting line or that 23. So I think that's a little bit behind it, that like creating their own training camps, because players aren't getting that with their club teams because seasons have ended.
Yeah. And I think even though this is a lengthy preliminary roster for Netherlands, I think you can go across the board from the names on there and point out there's some familiar faces on this squad that the U.S. just faced in recent competition over the last 18 months, but also in that previous World Cup, right? Infamously in that World Cup final. And I'm curious if some of those names will be among the 23 players that are going to go to the World Cup. You know, what is the coaching staff going to value in these final evaluations? Are they going to value that experience? Are they going to lean on to players who have been part of this process before? Are they going to lean further into maybe some of the younger talent across the pool here? I'm very curious to sort of see what it's going to be, and honestly, I appreciate it. I think maybe I'm not going to say that the Dutch are known for gamesmanship, but I love that they said, you know what, we're not ready to put out 23. Here's a preliminary list of 30, and we will get you the 23 later on, because the United States are a national team program that have not released their roster as of yet. So they're not on the board. There's no early glimpses or looks at who's going to get a shot or crack at that 23-player roster. Portugal, another one of the teams that the United States is going to go up against in Group E. They had a little bit of a longer path to the World Cup. They had to participate in that Interconfederation playoff, but they got business taken care of in February, and they were the final team to clinch their spot in Group E. Some familiar faces maybe for folks who are more tuned into the NWSL. Jessica Silva on this roster. With Benfica, 28-year-old forward who can absolutely go at back lines and kind of wreak some havoc for sure. And we'll definitely see what she can do against the United States back line. I would anticipate that, if you've got any experience on the Portugal team going up against any American players or any American systems, that's a player that you're going to want in your starting 11 going up against the United States. So congratulations to Jessica Silva and the other 22 players across this roster. Always exciting to see who's gonna go ahead and represent. But lots of players from Benfica on this one for sure, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
They could sometimes play spoiler along the way in Europe. I'm eager to see when all the rosters come through and kind of play those group matchups where we're going to look at individual one-on-ones between all of these teams.
We still have a lot to see. I mean, I'm looking at that list. It's with this expanded World Cup, it is going to be a lot of stuff to go through in the next couple weeks. Sandra, are you ready?
I had to. We don't have a choice, Jordan. Yeah. We don't have a choice.
I did see South Africa's line 23 came out, and Tembi Katlana is on that from Racing Louisville, who has it's been so good to see her back on the field, and she is a difference maker, and she can get after players. So really big injury recovery for her, but good to see her on the field and on that roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a massive signing when Louisville landed her as well. Just an injury, unfortunately, the timing of it just wasn't able to make an appearance throughout the remainder of that 2022 season. But it's been cool to see her recovery and her comeback, and absolutely one of those players that stretches back lines really for Racing. They've got some good attacking pieces, and we've already we've spoken a lot about Savannah DeMello on this show. Congratulations to her as well for earning Player of the Month honors in the league. But I think as the weeks go by, you see a player like Atlanta kind of show why they went out and they picked her up and wanted her to be part of what they're building in Racing Louisville. So I look, South Africa, I would anticipate is going to also make some noise in this World Cup. They're winners of the African Cup. So probably favorites, I think, maybe in terms of African teams entering this World Cup, and in terms of programs that can go out there and really make some noise. So I like doing this. I like seeing the rosters come in and they drop, and we get a look at players who are going to represent this summer, players that we're going to get acquainted with pretty quickly and rapidly in less than 2 months. So we'll keep doing these as they roll out. So make sure you always check in with us whenever we're doing some World Cup content. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere, because we're going to close out the episode taking a look at the U.S. Women's National Team, talk about who's hot, who's not. We'll be back.
The Portland Thorns fly east for their battle with Orlando Pride. Sunday on CBS Sports Network.
All right, let's close it out with some U.S. national team news. We have closed the chapter on May. We're in a new month for club play in NWSL. We've heard so much about how these final couple of months we're going to have a role in players making a push for this final 23-player roster heading to the World Cup. Before Lisa went off to go get married, Jordan, we did a little bit of a roster prediction. We talked about players who were our locks and who we think is going to be on that plane headed to New Zealand and Australia. But we're a little bit removed from that now. In terms of what we've seen to close out the month of May and sort of kickstart June, who are some players that you think are trending up here, trending a little bit hotter here?
Yeah, I think I have to start with the game I just saw and watching Casey Kruger in person and what she did. She is getting hot. Just from that game, 8 final third entries, the most on her team, 8 duels won, second on the team, 8 possessions won, second most touches. She was all over the place, and not to mention saved a goal with a little flick at the back post in the second half. And I said that might be, or in the first half, she did that, because in the second half, it was in the first half. And I said that might be the moment that we look back on and say, hey, if Casey Kruger wasn't there, this is a different result. And that absolutely would have been a different result. So I am going Casey Kruger, and I'm going to go Jaden Shaw. I have to. She got another assist.
I love it.
Didn't play that much, and she still affects the game in such a positive way. I'm going to bang on that drum. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't care if it's not going to happen, because.
But you're right. She literally turned something out of nothing. I mean, just needed seconds really to come on into that game and shake it up for them against Gotham. And look, that's music to my ears. I love to hear you on the Casey Kruger train now. I had her as a lock for me, and you and Lisa hit me with the woes, and I'm like,
hey,
smarter
than us.
And I'm like, I'm keeping an eye on it, and we'll see. But I'm with you. I thought she had another great game against Angel City. I do want to maybe talk about this goalkeeper pool a little bit, because I was inspired by Germany still having competition with 4 keepers. That look, we all had our locks in with number 1 and number 2. Believe you had some praise for Kingsbury, Lisa and I thinking that it's still going to come down to Adriana Franch, but I want to bring a player who's gotten hot and has stayed hot. That if we're talking about Aubrey Kingsbury, maybe why aren't we talking about this player too? But Abby Smith has been doing some incredible things with Gotham FC. Do you agree? Disagree?
Oh yeah, I think she's had a great season. I think the thing that leads me to Kingsbury over Smith is just the consistency over a number of years. And unfortunately for Smith, she's been a backup for a couple of years in Portland, now getting that starting role, which she deserves. And it's one of the hardest positions in the league to get a starting position. It is a goalkeeper, because there's one on each team. And there's at least 3 or 4 sometimes. So yeah, I think Abby Smith has been really great this year, and made, a couple of weeks ago, she got player of the week and save of the week, I think, because she just was outstanding in some of the saves that she had. So I like that shout. I like you throwing her in there, put her in the bag. She's getting hot.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? Why not? I was like, if we're just looking at club play specifically over the course of these last couple months, why not, throw her hat in the ring? I feel like in terms of the pecking order of things, Kingsbury would likely have that advantage as someone who had spent some time with national team camps over the course of the last 2 years to 18 months. So maybe I think if you're looking at orders of things, that's maybe how you rate them. But wouldn't be surprised if based on club play coming out of the World Cup, that we see some of these players that we're talking about trending up, getting hot, maybe get called into some of those kind of post World Cup camps as well. We definitely saw that with Andonovski as he took over the team, that he didn't shy away from calling in players who were trending up in the league, and typically brings in players based and try to reward them based on accelerated club play. So maybe a name that we'll hear kind of post World Cup. Now, while there are players who are trending up and getting hot. On the other side of that, there are players who are maybe kind of hitting a plateau, maybe even trending down a little bit. I mean, Jordan, is there a player that you still want to see a little something extra from in the final, maybe even week to 2 week push to the World Cup roster?
Yeah, of course. I'll talk about those players. Did we skip who's been staying hot?
Well, hit me.
Okay, staying hot. Sophia Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Crystal Dunn. Hello.
Yeah.
Alana Cook, Naomi Girma. I would say all those players are staying hot for me.
I think those were players who were also locks on all 3 of our roster predictions. So,
but you need them to stay hot.
Been hot, stayed hot. Who's not?
Yes. Who is trending down? Okay, I have to look at my notes here.
Trending down. Like, who's someone who's maybe like hit like a plateau, like who's just kind of like maybe not really moving that needle up or down, but you still want to see. I see it in a few Spirit players, honestly.
Ashley Sanchez, and I have watched the Spirit play, and I don't think this system is good for her. I don't think, and it's just, I can't put my, like, there are moments where I feel like, I don't know if it's her, and she can be this type of player who's like a little up and down. But when she's up, she's worth having on your team, because the creativity that lives in her veins is so unpredictable. But I don't feel like she's affecting the play as much as she can. She's gotten some chances in front of goal and she's not capitalizing, minus the one, I think, Challenge Cup. She had a worldie from like 30 yards away. So I would like to see more for her, and I think her stock is dropping a little bit. And then I think stock dropping on these players that are just a little bit unknowns. O'Hara, Purse, Rose Lavelle, have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, we got to see the return of Becky Sauerbrunn in that Cascadia rivalry game. Came on late in the second half, but that's a good sign. That's a promising sign. Your United States women's national team captain back out there after this lingering foot issue, getting the minutes back up before hopefully heading to another World Cup. But that's not maybe the same for Rose Lavelle, and player like this is running out of time. I think if you're looking at trying to get her some minutes before they get into a camp, I thought you made a good point and an interesting note that a player like Rose Lavelle, that they might not actually need to play until later on into the stages of the World Cup. And it kind of kicked me back to the 2019 World Cup, and that was a little similar game planning, I think, around Marta in Brazil a little bit. They said, listen, we know you're almost there, you're not quite there yet, but we're going to need you in this World Cup and in those later rounds. And what an incredible World Cup run that they had in a final knockout round match from Marta with her epic speech, right? But it brought me back to that. Has anything changed for you since we made our locks? Is Roosevelt just still that lock, even with the precautions that they're taking at this moment?
I think I'm just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the only one sitting in that position. Everybody wants to know what's going on with Rose Lavelle right now. But I still think she's on the plane.
Yeah.
Just because too, the threat she brings, no matter if it's for 90 minutes, which I think everyone that is a fan of the U.S. team is hopeful for 90 minutes, or it's 10 or 15. She is crafty, intelligent, and that left foot is just a thing of beauty. So I think she's on the plane. You have her on the bench, and teams are planning to say, okay, what if Rose Lavelle comes in this game?
Another good point. Absolutely. I mean, we'll see. Look, I think folks would feel differently if they maybe saw her get some minutes before going into the World Cup. But I'm with you in that that's the kind of player that you take in the event that the group stage goes the way that you plan out for it, and make sure that you have her available and ready to go for those late stage games. But I wanted to bring that back on this episode because I said, you know what, Jordan, when you said that, it took me back to 2019, and I thought about Marta in Brazil and how she was kind of in a similar situation. And maybe there's some folks who are like, how are you going to compare Marta with Rose Lavelle? But I'm going to do that. I mean, these are two players who are that essential to their national team programs. I think you absolutely want to have that creativity and that left foot, like you said, going into the World Cup with Lavelle. But we'll see. We're going to keep doing more World Cup content for you all as the days get shorter and shorter leading up to this summer's tournament. So make sure you tune in to everything we got going on for you with Attacking Third. But that's a wrap for today. So thanks everyone for listening to A3. Download, follow, listen to us anywhere you get your podcast. Watch us too. Subscribe so that you get alerts whenever we go live at youtube.com/Attacking Third. And we'll be back on Thursday with a weekend preview. Okay, so check back in with us. For Sandra Herrera and Jordan Angeli, this was Attacking Third.